Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm taking you to the Master Premier Cup because we need to talk about Shadowclaw Metagross. This new legacy fast move on Metagross has turned it into an absolutely overtuned monster. In the 1-0 shield, Shadowclaw Metagross in the Master League Premier Cup has a perfect win rate of 34 wins and 0 losses. For the team, I paired it up with Florges, whose debuff move Chilling Water makes it incredibly strong in this meta, and Gholdengo as the save switch to try and hopefully have some neutral play. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and take a look at Shadowclaw Metagross in the Master Premier Cup. Picking up a great lead in game number 1, Florges into Gyarados, it's a simultaneous switch, Gholdengo into Metagross. Now, I made this switch specifically because I was expecting with the Gyarados lead, there would be the Metagross save switch. My opponent does not build up to the Meteor Mash, so I decide not to shield. However, this is where I learned the power of Metagross, as if you no-shield a Meteor Mash, then Metagross can actually get the farm down and win switch advantage. I bring in my own Metagross, I'm going to go for a shield farm down myself. My opponent will go for the last second Meteor Mash, although they did have enough for the Earthquake. In comes Gyarados. Gyarados is going to be walling off the charge attacks from Metagross, but with Shadowclaw now hitting for neutral damage, this is where Metagross is able to fight back. Crunch is going to land, Metagross farming up. This is very close to a range where Meteor Mash will be able to take the knockout. Meteor Mash just does not get the knockout. Gyarados with the 1 HP survive. But Metagross is supposed to be walled by Gyarados. That's how strong Shadowclaw Metagross is you have play in basically any matchup you are in. In the back, Shadow Magnezone, and my opponent is in a tricky spot. Do they go for the Mirror Shot, which doesn't do a lot of damage, or they're harder hitting Wild Charge before I can apply debuffs? They go for the Wild Charge, but now, due to that defense drop, I can knock them out with a Chilling Water. My opponent will need to stall the switch timer and then look to go for a catch. I'm putting up the shield as they will go for the Mirror Shot. Mirror Shot does not get the debuff. There's the catch attempt. They do not get it. Back in comes the Magnezone. They have reset that Wild Charge defense drop, so I go for the Moonblast. It does slightly more damage, and it's enough to take the knockout and win the game. Hopping into the next match, and it's a terrible lead. Florges into Metagross. I'll throw a Fairy Wind and then save switch into Gholdengo. My opponent is going to stay in this matchup, but this is part of why I wanted Gholdengo on the team. Gholdengo doesn't have the strongest neutral matchups, but it's good fast move pressure into the Metagross. Out comes Dragonite, and this is pretty fine as Gholdengo. Power Gem is going to hit for monster damage. Power Gem lands, and here my opponent must have thought Power Gem was 45 energy, because they undertapped trying to go for the CMP tie, but I wasn't at the move, and the Free Astonish actually allows me to get the farm down. Exiting with energy is really nice, but back in comes the Metagross. Metagross can shield and farm me down, and I cannot let that happen. So I aggressively pivot into my own Metagross. In the back is Gyarados, so on paper I should be in trouble here, as Gyarados is a wall to Metagross. But again, with this Shadowclaw now being able to hit for neutral in the Gyarados matchup, Metagross is so fine here. My opponent does end up Aqua Tail baiting. A Crunch would not have knocked out, and that's why I clicked no shield. Meteor Mash is going to land. There's the switch into Florges, and my opponent, they were trying to land the move on the Metagross, but instead Aqua Tail lands on the Florges. Back in comes their Metagross. They're going to win charge attack priority, but I see my win con, and it's saving the shield for my Metagross. Meteor Mash takes the knockout, but my Metagross has the health advantage. We farm down the Metagross and the Gyarados. Metagross is just an absolute menace. And unfortunately, it's back on the lead in the next match. Bad lead, so this time I try something a little different. Instead of throwing the Fairy Wind, I just save switch into Gholdengo instantly, and my opponent sends out Gyarados. This is pretty nice. I'll be able to force a shield advantage from the Gyarados, and I should just always let the Gholdengo go. However, in this game, I believe I actually make a pretty big misplay, and that is that after no shielding the Crunch, which is what I should do, I end up shielding here. This is a critical error, and let me explain why. Because if my opponent no shields and then farms me down with the Metagross, I'm gonna get swept. You cannot let an opposing Metagross get a shield or energy advantage. And unfortunately, that's what I've now done. So honestly, this is a terribly played game by me. This meta basically starts and ends now with whoever has the shield and energy advantage Metagross wins. I do get the shield call right on the Earthquake, which is very important, but unfortunately, I'm still in a pretty uncomfortable spot. I go for the Meteor Mash, my opponent calls the bait, and I've lost count. I have to hope it's just a Meteor Mash, and it is just a Meteor Mash. In the back, it's Togekiss, and the Shadow Claw went through, and that is what's going to win me this game, because my opponent can no longer reset Chilling Water debuffs. So I immediately switch into the Florges, and now it's just going to be Chilling Water spam, and there's nothing Togekiss can do. Dazzling Gleam would normally two-shot, but let's click Chilling Water, and suddenly it's not going to be able to two-shot anymore. So, unfortunately for this poor Togekiss, it's just going to get absolutely overrun by Florges. Debuff after debuff after debuff, Togekiss cannot catch a break, and if they shield here, Metagross has loaded energy. The far better way to play that game for me would have been to just take the shield advantage in the mid game, farm down with the Florges, and then my Metagross could have swept, but unfortunately, I misplayed it, and that ended up costing me. A third Metagross lead in a row. Let's save switch into Goldengo. Opponent sends out a cowboy hat Snorlax, and here is where I am kicking myself for not building up to the Focus Blast, because they have no reason to respect it if I don't build up. Snorlax is a Pokemon that I think is back in a big way, not only courtesy of that Body Slam rebuff, but the fact that due to its normal typing, it's going to have a pretty nice matchup into Metagross. Here, I do actually farm up to the Focus Blast, but unfortunately my opponent does not respect it. In comes Florges, but things are honestly not going great in this match whatsoever, as these Fairy Winds don't do a lot to Snorlax. Generally, Florges has a very good matchup into Snorlax, but unfortunately, I'm trying to farm it down, and if you try and farm down something as bulky as Snorlax, Snorlax is just going to make charge attack after charge attack after charge attack. I farm up just shy of 100 energy. Chilling Water will be able to take the knockout. When they bring in their Metagross, I will be clicking Chilling Water and then just looking to switch. I have to hope that my Metagross will be able to 1v2 in the back. I bring in my Metagross. They're going to stay in and throw what's almost assuredly a Meteor Mash bait, but I will still put up the shield. In the back is Goodra. Now, Goodra is a matchup where Metagross should be incredibly strong. However, I think what's going to cost me is the fact that I am down a shield. I've also lost some HP due to the Shadow Claw damage that I took. So even though Goodra does do very poorly, I think it'll do enough to where I'm going to lose this game. Meteor Mash is going to be shielded. There's the switch into the Florges. Florges immediately answered with the Aqua Tail. I'm going to bring back in the Metagross, but I'm always going to get outpaced here. If I shield, I lose. If I no shield, I also lose. So I decided to save some time. We're going to no shield. My opponent can just Shadow Claw me down, and I will resign the match. So Snorlax, definitely not what Goldengo save switch was hoping to see. Florges into Florges in the next match. Ideally in this matchup, I would prefer to absorb some energy, save energy on the Florges, and then look to pivot out. I have two stronger answers in the back. So I end up calling the Chilling Water bait, and out comes Goldengo. Goldengo, they farm up a ton, and they bring out a Shadow Snorlax. This time, I am going to farm up to the Focus Blast. Focus Blast would be one-shotting Shadow Snorlax, and they don't respect it either. Oh my goodness, am I going to have to TM Goldengo and take away Shadow Ball? Apparently, I might need to, because that's back-to-back games that Snorlax has hit the field. And unfortunately for me, Snorlax is not respecting the damage that Power Gem could do. Shadow Snorlax, I could have made a Power Gem so they're forced to throw their energy, and it's going to be Superpower. In comes Florges. Florges just fails the farm down as Snorlax, even though it's a -1 Body Slam, still gets some damage. Back in comes their Florges. Unfortunately, they do win the coin flip, so they do win charge attack priority. I call the Chilling Water bait once again, and I just need some damage. So I fire off the Moonblast. Moonblast is going to land. In comes Metagross. In the back is Magnezone. Magnezone is a Pokemon that this team is a little bit soft to. For those who don't have Goldengo, you could very easily put Magnezone here. My opponent makes an incredible bait call, calling the fact that I was not full send in the Earthquake, and now I think I might be in trouble. But I get a shield call right on the Wild Charge, and that means they are now very low. They've taken a lot of damage in this match. Maybe there's a chance. Quick switch into the Florges. My opponent does actually end up throwing their energy. It is going to be the Mirror Shot. Back in comes the Metagross. Metagross answered with the Florges. This game is going to be an interesting one. Chilling Water, no shielded, and I throw the Meteor Mash. They have to no shield this, because if they shield, they have lost the game, because Magnezone loses charge attack priority to Metagross. so I get to shield up as the Metagross. Even though I'm -2, I get the full farm down exiting with the Earthquake loaded, and that's going to do it. Even at -2, this is massive overkill, knocking out that problematic Magnezone and taking the win. We move to the next match, and it's a blast from the past, Florges into Shadow Rhyperior. Unfortunately, Rhyperior was largely gutted by the reworked 2 Breaking Swipe, as its pacing has been completely destroyed. Shadow Magnezone Safe Switch answered with Goldengo. Goldengo, unfortunately, cannot quite get the farm down, so I'm forced to throw the Power Gem. The Power Gem, at the very least, guarantees that I get a shield back if they want to force my final shield, and I'm pretty happy with that trade. Switch advantage will be very good in this game because obviously they have a Shadow Rhyperior. So they're going to bring Rhyperior back on the field. Rhyperior will take a lot of damage from Shadow Ball. The regular Rhyperior can tank it pretty comfortably. The Shadow would want to shield. There's the switch into Florges. My opponent is going to send out their own Florges, and I'm up so much energy. So let's go for the Moonblast. Moonblast lands, that's devastating damage. I continue the farm, and my opponent will look to connect with the Moonblast. Moonblast is going to land, and now it's all about the energy management. I farm up to 100 energy, which should be just shy of the Chilling Water. So the Moonblast takes the knockout. In comes Rhyperior. I get the Chilling Water, and that's going to seal it. I imagine Rhyperior in this meta is probably on Superpower plus Rock Wrecker, but even if they have Superpower, it's just not going to knock out. We move to the next game, picking up what looks to be a very scary lead, Florges into Magnezone. Now, I've been saying a lot of nice things about Metagross, but I've got to talk about Florges. What if I told you Florges wins the Zero Shield against Magnezone? It sounds absurd. There's no way it can be true, and yet, watch this. They go for the Mirror Shot, they do not get the debuff, and they're already at -1 attack, so it doesn't do a lot of damage. Suddenly, they're at -2 attack. Even if they Wild Charge here, it will not knock out. They are going to go for the Wild Charge. It does not knock out, and Florges is able to emerge victorious, forcing either switch or shield advantage. In comes Golisopod, and this is a bad Pokemon for my backline to see. Golisopod does have more bulk in the Master Premier Cup than I was initially expecting it to have, and I did make a bit of an adjustment in moveset. After the Snorlax has disrespected the threat of Focus Blast, I'm putting Focus Blast on the team. Unfortunately, Golisopod does get the perfect farm down. That's going to make things a little bit tricky. In comes Metagross. At the very least, Aqua Jet will do absolutely nothing. So my opponent will go for the Aqua Jet, and I'm just looking for the 1 shield farm down as Metagross energy goes everywhere. Metagross putting up the shield. My opponent is going to switch into a Florges, and this game is over as Florges is about to get absolutely shredded by Meteor Mash. And to add insult to injury, we get the catch onto our own Florges, catching the Chilling Water. They're going to undercharge and stop tapping to minimize the amount of farm Metagross gets. But it's not about the farm. What I need is the fast moves. We Shadow Claw down Golisopod and take the win. Unfortunately, the Metagross lead returns in the next match, and that's bad news for Florges. Safe Switch Goldengo answered with Rhyperior, a very good Pokemon to bait out. And it looks like the battles may be slightly out of order as Goldengo is back on Shadow Ball. Now, this is a scenario where having Focus Blast would have been nice because I could have forced a shield, whereas this is the worst case scenario. They leave on basically 1 HP, meaning they're going to get huge damage into the Florges and I get no farm. So that is kind of the worst case scenario. So this is definitely a game where I wish that I was running the Focus Blast. In the back is Shadow Magnezone, and at this point my opponent can win straight Mirror Shot, so there's not really a way that I can win this. I felt like almost every game that I played with this team, I had win cons. A lot of them were just misplays by me. This was a rare game where it was just over on lock-in, where Goldengo, unfortunately not being able to pressure any kind of an advantage out of the Rhyperior was actually very costly. In comes Florges, but there's no win con in this game. I'm just prolonging the inevitable, trying to find a win con where there definitely is none. So we're just going to no-shield the Metagross. May as well end the battle as there's just no way out of that extremely hard counter matchup. Hopping into the final match, we see Snorlax once again, but this time it's on the lead, and it is the Shadow Snorlax. Shadow Snorlax, let's debuff them. I imagine they're going to try and throw up before the Moonblast, so I apply the Chilling Water debuff, and now they're going to switch out into Metagross. Metagross swiftly answered with Goldengo, and this is a scenario where it's actually going to be a little bit awkward that I don't have Shadow Ball. I shield, I end up shielding the Meteor Mash bait, but I see the vision. I'm going to farm down, and I'm going to Focus Blast. No one has been respecting the Focus Blast. It's time. I used some charge TMs on it. Let's go, Goldango. So I give up both shields. They bring in the Snorlax. It's time. Let's go. Do they respect the damage? They do. They shield. Are you kidding me? Oh no, that is so unfortunate. They did not respect it before. I TM Focus Blast, but my opponent makes a critical error. They miscount and they shield what could have only been a power gem, and getting that final shield can potentially bring me back into this game. Florges going to get hit with a body slam. That is a decent amount of damage, and they'll get to body slam number 2 before I get the Moonblast. This body slam is going to get Florges into the red health. I'm going to fire off the Moonblast, and then it's time for Metagross. Moonblast lands, in comes Metagross. My opponent switches into Excadrill. It's going to be a race to the charge attack. Excadrill loses charge attack priority. Metagross, king of the steel types. One-hit knockout with the Earthquake. In comes Shadow Snorlax. Metagross Shadow Claws down, and that is a good game. Man, after testing out Metagross today, I understand why teams are having to try and build with Pokemon like Snorlax, because Metagross is just an absolute terror in neutral matchups. Even against Gyarados, where its charge attacks are completely walled, the Shadow Claw fast move pressure means that if you get a little bit of an advantage, whether that's a shield advantage, up some energy, you can actually flip that matchup. Metagross is unbelievably powerful. Now, an important thing is not only is it very powerful, let's talk about how to beat it. I think there's several Pokemon that do a very nice job of trying to check common archetypes that the Metagross likes to build around. The first is Magnezone. Shadow Claws still add up on Magnezone quite a bit, but Magnezone's ability to outpace and consistently do pretty nice Volt Switch damage means that Magnezone and the Shadow Magnezone can be... Granted, it's not a hard answer to Metagross, because I don't really think most any Pokemon is a hard answer to Metagross, but at the very least, it is able to outpace the Metagross, which is pretty valuable. Another option is Kingambit. I will be uploading a video on Kingambit. If you're watching this, the day releases probably tomorrow, because I ran Kingambit after running this team, and Kingambit was able to put in a lot of work. Kingambit, I really liked its ability to actually survive an Earthquake, which really surprised me, because Earthquake I would have thought KO'd, but Kingambit, Earthquake only does about 70% to it. So I would say those are some pretty okay options when it comes to looking to try and counter Metagross. For those who are running Metagross, the biggest thing you have to pay attention to will be the mirror. You have to be very, very careful, especially because a lot of Metagross teams pair Metagross with things that lose to Metagross. This team being no exception, considering I have Florges. You have to be very, very careful that a lot of the times winning switch advantage won't even be beneficial, because if your opponent's Metagross gets the energy head start or the shield advantage, then things can get out of hand very quickly. So it's a very different Master Premier meta to the ones that we've seen before, but I do think it's a very, very cool meta, and I had a ton of fun playing it today. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you, as always, to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.